There is a form of bankruptcy that shows up in no financial statement, triggers no alert from your bank, and leaves no trace you can point to until the day you look back and realize you spent your entire life rich in distraction and poor in everything that actually compounds. You track your spending, you count your hours, some of you track your calories. But there is one asset, the single most scarce, highest return resource you possess, that you spend every single morning without ever stopping to count what it actually costs you. And the unsettling part is this: the most sophisticated systems ever built, the ones running behind every screen you touch right now, were engineered from the ground up to make sure you never stop to count. Not because they are indifferent to you, because your undirected mental energy is their most profitable raw material. Have you ever noticed how the people who build lasting wealth, not the ones performing it online, but the ones who actually built something real, almost always describe protecting their attention like it was a physical vault? That is not a coincidence. That is a law of behavioral physics that most people are never taught. 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote a short letter that began with a line most people misread as a complaint about time. He said, "The problem is not that life is short. The problem is that we waste most of it." But Seneca was not talking about hours. He was describing something far more precise, what we now understand as focused cognitive energy, the finite, non-renewable capacity of the human mind to engage with one problem completely, resist every competing signal, and convert sustained attention into real, compounding value. That capacity is not measured in hours. It is measured in depth of engagement. And unlike money, it cannot be borrowed from tomorrow, carried forward from yesterday, or restored by working harder tonight. Every morning you wake with a full reserve. By noon, most people have spent it in ways they genuinely cannot account for. Research in behavioral neuroscience documented this effect with clarity that should have changed everything. The average person makes roughly 35,000 micro-decisions per day. Every single one, no matter how trivial, draws from the same cognitive pool that powers your most important thinking: your financial discipline, your capacity for long-term planning, your ability to resist impulse in favor of the compound future you claim to want. Psychologist Roy Baumeister spent years demonstrating that this capacity, what he called cognitive willpower, depletes with use and does not regenerate until you rest. Later research on prefrontal cortex activity confirmed what he found in behavior. The more decisions you process early, the less capacity remains for the decisions that actually determine your financial trajectory. Judges make harsher decisions after lunch. Surgeons schedule complex procedures in the morning. Elite investors deliberately minimize the surface area of their daily choices, not because they are privileged with time, but because they understand something that was never part of your financial education. Mental energy behaves exactly like financial capital. When you invest it, when you direct it with intensity toward high-resistance, meaningful work, it does not simply return the value of that effort. It builds the neural architecture that makes the next investment cheaper and more powerful. Each deliberate act of sustained attention restructures the brain in the direction of more efficient focus. That is compound return on cognitive capital. When you scatter it across notifications, low-stakes decisions, passive consumption that demands nothing and returns nothing, you do not just lose the energy. You train your brain to expect low-resistance stimulation. You lower its tolerance for the discomfort that every meaningful financial decision requires. That is cognitive inflation. And most people are experiencing devastating cognitive inflation every single day, eroding the purchasing power of their highest-yield asset before the market even opens. Here is the reversal that changes the way you see everything. When you study the people who built genuine, durable wealth, not the ones with expensive content, but the ones whose compound returns speak for themselves, the consistent pattern is not more output. It is radical selectivity. Warren Buffett reads between 4 and 5 hours every single day. In near total silence, his office does not have a computer terminal on the desk. His calendar contains almost nothing on most days. Not because he has luxury, because he understood, decades before behavioral economics had the vocabulary to describe it, that focused cognitive energy directed toward a small number of high-quality problems was the only investment with no ceiling on its return. The discipline to say no to almost everything, any distraction, any low-value decision, any stimulation that returns nothing, is not restriction. It is aggressive portfolio management of the only asset that cannot be counterfeited, borrowed, stolen, or inflated. And here is where the metaphor becomes structurally exact. Money compounds only when it is not spent, but money that simply sits earns nothing either. Cognitive energy compounds precisely when it is directed, not scattered, not hoarded in stillness, but channeled with intensity and discipline into problems that matter. The disciplined mind does not work more, it allocates better. But here is what makes this uncomfortable in a new direction. The systems designed to capture your attention are not passive. They are actively updated, continuously tested, and refined by rooms full of extremely intelligent people whose singular mission is to convert your focused mental energy into their revenue before you convert it into yours. Every notification is timed to interrupt deep work at peak cognitive capacity. Every infinite scroll removes the voluntary stopping point. Every recommendation algorithm is calibrated to keep you in a state of low-resistance consumption, the behavioral equivalent of spending your highest denomination currency on purchases that depreciate the moment you make them and charge compound interest on the decision to continue. The mechanism is so frictionless, so invisible, so automatic that it no longer requires a decision from you. And that is exactly the problem. The most dangerous version of this is not someone who is unmotivated. It is someone who is intelligent, financially serious, genuinely working towards something real, whose highest-yield cognitive asset is being quietly liquidated every morning before they ever sit down to do the work their financial future depends on. That is not a failure of discipline. That is the absence of a framework precise enough to see where the drain actually is. Here is the framework, 3 tiers, precise and operational. The first tier, treat your first hour of cognitive energy as if it were your highest denomination note. Before any screen, before any decision that does not directly require your peak cognitive capacity. Email, news, social media, none of these are morning investments. They are afternoon tasks for a mind that has already made its most important allocation. Your first conscious hour is your best mental capital. The question is not how you fill it. The question is what problem, what decision, or what deep work session your compound future is waiting on, and whether you are giving it your best or your remainder. Most people give the world their best mental energy and their goals whatever is left by evening. The second tier, eliminate every decision that drains cognitive currency without returning compound value. Automate recurring choices, meal structure, wardrobe, financial transfers, scheduling templates. Every decision you remove from your active cognitive ledger is a withdrawal you converted into a permanent standing order, invisible, automatic, and free. What you stop spending on low-return decisions is automatically available for investment in what actually builds. This is not laziness. This is capital preservation as discipline. The third tier, create deliberate daily exposure to cognitive resistance. Read something genuinely difficult, hold a problem longer than your instinct wants to resolve it. Resist the reflex to switch, scroll, or simplify before the discomfort has taught you what it came to teach. This is not discipline for its own sake. This is compound interest earned on your attention portfolio. A mind trained in resistance develops the precise capacity that every form of wealth is downstream of, the ability to think clearly under pressure, make difficult financial decisions without emotional distortion, and sustain the long game when everyone around you has traded their future for short-term comfort. When you begin treating your focused mental energy as compound capital, protecting it at the start of each day, eliminating what bleeds it for no return, and deliberately investing it in high-resistance work, something fundamental shifts. You stop operating like someone running an invisible cognitive deficit. You start building like someone whose most valuable account is compounding daily, quietly, without spectacle, generating the mental clarity and behavioral discipline that every other form of wealth is downstream of. The question that remains is not whether you have enough money to invest. The question is whether you have enough of the one currency that generates everything else before someone else's algorithm spends it for you first. Look at how you used the first hour of today. That answer tells you more about where you are going financially than your bank balance ever will.